It started as an ordinary day. But the dawn of 13th August 1964 was anything but ordinary. As a young reporter, I found myself standing outside Strangeways prison in Manchester, notebook in one hand, a cheap biro in the other, waiting with a knot in my stomach. At 8 o'clock sharp, a man would die inside those walls. In Liverpool, at exactly the same moment, another man would meet the same fate. Those two names, Gwynne Owen Evans and Peter Anthony Allen, would become footnotes in history, though we didn't realise it at the time. They were not master criminals, not infamous gangsters, just two petty crooks from Preston, whose botched robbery in a quiet Cumbrian village left one man dead and the rest of us witnessing the last drop of the rope in Britain. I remember the first press briefing we had on the case. The superintendent described them as two jobless men down on their luck. That about summed it up. Gwynne Evans was 24. He had ginger hair, a sharp tongue, and a habit of drifting in and out of trouble. He'd done a short spell in the army, but discipline never stuck. His record was littered with petty thefts and fraud. He liked to talk big, but most who knew him said he was more bluster than brains. Peter Allen, at 21, was younger but no less wayward. He had tried his hand at truck driving, labouring, even a stint as a junior soldier, but nothing lasted. He'd already picked up convictions for minor offences. He lived in Preston with his wife Mary and their two little children in a modest terrace on Clarendon Road. By the spring of 1964, Evans was lodging with the Allens. 3 adults and 2 toddlers crammed together, bills mounting, fines unpaid. I've reported on many a crime born of desperation, and this was one of them. 2 men, too proud to admit defeat, too foolish to see the risks. It was Evans who spotted an opportunity. He knew Jack West, John Allen West, though most called him Jack, a 53-year-old laundry worker from Seaton, Cumberland. They'd worked together years earlier at Lakeland Laundry. West was unmarried, lived alone in a semi-detached house on King's Avenue. He was respected in the village, quiet, reliable, a man who put in his years of service and earned a gold watch for it. Evans told Allen that West might lend him £100. If not, they could take it. A harebrained plan, but to them it was a way out. They borrowed Mary's family car. No, they stole one instead, a black Ford Prefect, and on that April night they set off north. Mary and the children were bundled in too, asleep in the back seat. Imagine that, driving to commit a robbery with your family in tow. That tells you something about the mindset of these men. Around 1 in the morning, Evans knocked on Jack West's door. West, knowing him from the past, let him in. We believe he even offered him a drink, the last act of hospitality he would give. The events that followed remain murky. Evans claimed he only asked for a loan, and that it was Allen who grew violent. Allen insisted the opposite, saying Evans had pulled a knife, but what we do know is that by 3 o'clock neighbours heard screams, scuffles, and the sickening sound of blows landing. When police entered later, they found Jack West's half-naked body at the bottom of his stairs. He had been struck over a dozen times about the head and stabbed clean through the heart. The scene was horrific. Blood smeared on the walls, furniture overturned, the final moments of a man's life written in chaos. the killers left with almost nothing: a gold watch, 2 bank books, and later £10 withdrawn from West's accounts. £10. That was the price of Jack West's life, and Evans, in his carelessness, left his raincoat hanging on the banister. In its pocket, a medallion engraved with his initials, a blunder so basic it was almost laughable if it hadn't been tied to murder. I still marvel at how quickly the detectives pieced it together. Within hours the coat was traced to Evans. They followed the trail to Liverpool, where a young woman confirmed she knew him. The stolen Ford Prefect turned up abandoned in Ormskirk, fingerprints inside matching both men. By 8th April, just 2 days later, police were at Alan's door in Preston. He tried to bluff it, said Evans had been with him all night, but Mary Allen quietly tipped off detectives about Evans's whereabouts. By evening, Evans was picked up in Manchester. In his pocket, West's watch, initials plain as day. One officer later recalled Evans muttering, "I only wanted to hit him. I didn't mean to kill him." He denied it later, of course, but from the start each man tried to save himself by throwing the other to the wolves. The trial began in June 1964 at Manchester Assizes. I can still see the grandeur of that old courtroom. The high ceiling, the oak panelling, the stern figure of Mr. Justice Ashworth presiding. The press gallery was packed. I sat wedged between 2 older hands from the Manchester Evening News. The charge was capital murder under the Homicide Act, murder committed in the course of theft, one of the last categories still punishable by death. Allen swore he'd only thrown a few punches. Evans, he said, was the knife man. Evans countered that he only went along on condition there'd be no violence. It was Allen, he claimed, who did the real damage. Then came the most dramatic turn. Mary Allen called to the stand. Imagine it. A wife testifying in a trial where her husband faced the gallows. She told the court that Evans had admitted stabbing West and had confessed to throwing the knife into Lake Windermere. She stuck to her police statement, but Evans' defence read out her letters to him, affectionate, even romantic, written while he awaited trial. Later letters turned bitter once Evans started blaming her husband. It was a scandalous revelation. Was she telling the truth or taking revenge? The judge warned the jury to treat her evidence with caution. In the end, the jury found them both guilty. The black cap was placed upon the judge's head. The words were spoken. They would suffer death in the manner prescribed by law. Both appealed, both lost. The Home Secretary refused to intervene. Locals in Preston circulated petitions, some demanding clemency, others demanding the hangman's rope. Alan's final days were tragic. During his last visit with Mary, he broke down, smashing his hand through a glass partition in despair. He injured himself badly, and on execution day he walked to the scaffold with his hand bandaged. Evans spent his last hours quietly. Some said he was resigned, others that he still hoped for a last-minute reprieve. But no such reprieve came. So at 8 a.m., 13 August 1964, both men were hanged simultaneously. Evans at Strangeways in Manchester, Allen at Walton Prison in Liverpool. The executioners were efficient. It took no more than 10 seconds from the condemned cell to the drop. I stood outside Strangeways that morning. The air was cool. the city oddly still. At 8 the notice was pinned to the prison gate. The sentence of the law was carried out this day upon Gwynne Owen Evans. No cheers, no jeers, just silence. In Liverpool, around 40 protesters held a vigil outside Walton. Opposition to the death penalty was gaining momentum. Inside, Alan cried, "Jesus!" as the hood went over his head. Those were his last words. At the time, few realised the significance. National papers gave it barely a paragraph, but history records it as the last judicial hanging in Britain. Within a year, Parliament suspended capital punishment for murder. By 1969, it was abolished entirely. Evans and Allen were unlucky with timing. Another few months, and they'd have lived out their days in prison. For me, as a young reporter, it was a moment that stuck. I'd covered many grim stories, but this one stayed with me, because it wasn't just the end of two men, it was the end of an era. If you found this story compelling, please like the video, subscribe to Extraordinary Days, and join the conversation in the comments below. Do you think Britain was right to end the rope, or should it have stayed? I'd love to hear your views.